Hey, I want to welcome everybody to Test, Fail, Learn, and Grow. And I'm not supposed to go off script, but I am. Yes, I do look like a rotisserie chicken today, a combination of the Dominican, and it's hot in here in these lights. So I just want to give that disclaimer, but really excited about the show today. As you know, we go beneath the surface of success. We uncover the lessons that are behind the risks, the stumbles, the breakthroughs. I'm Adam House, and every week we are going to bring you the real stories of founders, leaders, and creators that have faced the fire, learned from it, and came out stronger on the other side. So today's guest is someone who brings that lived experience into every room he walks into. He's part of our House of Bricks community, and what happens to be also, or who happens to be, my Vistage chair. So I've only known him for about a year, but feel like a close friend. And if you haven't heard of Vistage, you should absolutely check it out. It is life-changing. Met some great relationships. And as you know, with the House of Bricks, we talk about relationship capital being the most valuable capital. So Bernie is a leadership coach, facilitator, advisor, and he helps executives go deep into the process and the strategy, even holding me accountable at times, putting me to the fire every month. But on those fears, the beliefs, the patterns that shape how we show up, his journey spans decades of corporate experience, international moves, cultural adaptation, and now building community through Vistage and his own coaching practice. So, Bernie, I want to welcome you to Test, Fail, Learn, and Grow.
All right. Thanks, Adam. Great introduction. I'm about to steal some of that.
There was a lot there. I think Paul was messing with me on your bio just to see if I was on my game or not. But let's go back to the beginning, all right? You grew up in a pretty unique way, moving almost every year. And I know my kids can attest to this. I think we've moved 21, 22 times since they've been born, living in countries like South Africa, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and being the new kid over and over again. And I know that's not easy, especially when you're trying to find a sense of identity. So what do those early years teach you about risk and adaptation?
Yeah, I think, again, you've experienced that, and your kids have experienced it. Obviously, you've seen it from the parent perspective. And obviously, I went through this whole thing as the kid, which, again, like ages, whatever, 2 to 12 or so, that's a tough time, right? You build a lot of friendships. You always walk into a room with new kids, and you're always the new kid on the block, and it's hard, especially if you're not necessarily outgoing, to make friends and right, form new connections. And then 6 months, 9 months, 12 months later, you get yanked out of that whole situation again, and here again you start all over. And despite us having a home base in southern Germany, it was always right, you came back, and now it went from kindergarten to first grade, and everybody in that class was new. And every time we came back, we had the new kid on the block syndrome again, and it was hard to adapt to that and make connections.
Yeah, and look, this is a business community, but it's interesting that you chose a childhood story, right? And they say there's all different perspectives, but we're really kind of formed in those first 5 to 8 years. What was your biggest takeaway and things that you tested, kind of meeting new people, and how has that helped you today?
Yeah, when you said, right, that the testing was always, right, how do I make new friends? How am the getting invited to a group, and right, is the goofy way working, right? Is what sort of type of thing is working that gets you into this group and gets you accepted into a group that you don't really know who the other people in the group are. And I think this happens, right, even to this day, when you walk into a room, like in your community or into a Vistage group or something like that, right? You don't know who the people are. And that was really the part, I think, the testing portion of it, right? What works. You test something out, they accept you, maybe one part of the group accepts you. And the interesting thing was when we finally moved to Austria, and I went through middle school and high school. In Austria, you have like you're with the same like 24 to 30 kids in the classroom all time, and you don't go around from classroom to classroom. So you have this really core of that community, that you're part of it, and within that classroom, right, you've got to build the connections with all the 25 or so people that you're interacting every day. And I think that was part of the whole testing part, right? How do I do that and keep going on that one? And
Yeah,
clearly
and what I think makes it more difficult is kids are honest in both a good way and a bad. So at least you come into a new business group, right? And everyone's like, "Oh, hey, nice to meet you. Welcome here." And then they're getting coffee and then they're like, "Who's this guy?" You know? So kids, they'll just kind of, say what's on their mind. So I can imagine how that was tough, but that obstacle, right? You kind of turn into a stepping stone where you can really fit in any environment. And I think it probably gave you a lot of confidence in your identity, because when you meet new people, you have that choice, like, do I kind of fit to who they are or do I stay to who I am? So just from what I know of you, you're very consistent in who you are, and I think that played a big part in it. So we talk about testing, right? What do you see as kind of the biggest, we'll call it failure, but the learning of different things you tried and how that's helped you?
Yeah, I think when I started in school, I started basically a year early and always stayed ahead of that one, right? And then once you basically go through this whole thing, right, it was always then the challenge to can I stay at that grade level? And in Austria, if you fail if you fail one class, you're repeating the entire year. So your circle of like 25, 30 kids in the classroom is blown up, right? And so that fear was really part of that what really kept me going, right? Really set me down and sometimes at the very last minute, right, go study and cram for the last test or the last possibility to get going. And I think that was maybe one of those parts that fear of failure was always hanging in there and trying to overcome that. So basically I think that was a big challenge on that one. Yeah, and yeah.
Well, I know what's coming to my mind, which is, as a kid, that's a lot of pressure. So you get into a new school, you move, and maybe you're just not good at math, but you do good in every other subject. So now are you not only the new kid, there's the risk of being the kid that repeats, right? So that's kind of a double whammy. So I could see that pressure kind of weighing in. So as you're going through this process and like carrying that expectation to perform, and I grew up in a house, right, where sports were kind of king and competition. My older brother, were 2 years apart. So I know that builds a lot, but there's also that fear of rejection. And yet you kept showing up. So are you finding like a common thread that you're able to do that, or what shifted for you in this process?
Yeah, I think that fear of rejection was definitely something, right, that kept me studying, kept me going, kept me sitting down and sort of pull it out, right? Like I said, at the last minute. And Latin was my least favorite subject. And once I got to that final year and I had my last exam and I didn't need to go and do the finals on that one, I told my Latin teacher, right, you know what, I'm going to sit in the back of the classroom. You can basically, I'm not going to disrupt you. Don't disturb me. I'm going to be great there, right? So I ended up sort of making peace with that portion, and some other subjects came real easy, and that was fine. But the ones I really had to work hard at, that was always the tough part, and that fear of failure, I think, even keeps going to this day. Right? Is am I the right person to do this? Right? Those doubts keep settling in, and sometimes they are stronger than other days, and right, you think, you know what, yeah, I am, right, and I can do this, and I can stand in front of a group of business leaders like you and the other guys in the group. And sometimes I like think, am I really the right person to do this? Right. But yeah, you know what it is. And we're all human, right? We all have our challenges and went through failures, and we can learn from it and really go from that.
Well, and what I've seen just from knowing you is, number one, the consistency, but also the not just consistency in your preparation, but in the consistency in the way you structure things, but you're also consistent in showing up. So I know you have your own community, you're writing your own newsletters, but from the moment you joined the House of Bricks, I knew you would be on the calls. And you showed that over time. We launched a Substack newsletter. You're like, I'll try that, kind of getting in, but you don't start things and stop. You're consistent through it. So I think that's a huge character trait that was probably developed from of these experiences you had growing up, and now you've carried it over. But the fear of failure, there's two types of people. One, the ones that have fear and admit it, and the ones that are lying about it. So we all face fear, but I've seen that turn into a strength with you of how you're willing to test, fail, learn. And I've also seen growth over time, just even in your Vistage group and in you as a person, the things you're trying. But what is some of this, process brought to you as an adult that's helping you grow so much so fast?
Yeah, I think a lot of those what you learn, right? You try different things again, and I think I made really the biggest click for me that really happened was when I decided to go to college in Germany. Right, it was 8.5 hours away from where we lived. It was a super small college, about 250 students in the entire college. So there was two things, right? One was, hey, I'm going to separate from all of my friends and basically start something new and reconnect with something. But I also knew that, right, with the 90 kids that started as freshmen, the chance that you ran across everybody in the hallway, right? I mean, there was like we were all in the same classroom, and so the risk of failing in making new connections was pretty slim. So that was one of those things that I decided to pick, right? And this is why I went to a small college, and it was great for me, right? I had a great bunch of friends there. A lot of the people that were there were the ones that didn't go home for the weekend, right? A guy from Pakistan, a guy from India, a guy from whatever, northern Germany, southern Germany. We're right in the middle there, and right then picking the right people and connected with them, finding what brought them to that college, what brought them here, get some background around that. And that's really, I think, what allows me now to basically build those connections with others a lot quicker, right? And when we talk, right, hey, tell me a little bit about your background, right? When we do certain things as an inclusion exercise, right? I particularly pick those type of things that allows everybody to share a little bit more of their personal life, because that's really where those connections happen. And I'm still great friends with some of the people from college, right? 30 years after, buddy of mine is actually coming over this Sunday, right, from Germany, and he's going to stay with me, and we'll hang out.
I want to hang out here for a minute. So we've talked a lot about your childhood, and now you're a coach, but how did those childhood experiences, and we don't have to go through the test, fail, learn, grow process, but just some of those key learnings as a kid that can now translate it into your business career. And then we'll talk a little bit about how that led to you coaching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the translation really of that, those early failures or those challenges, right, whether they were failures or just getting hard stuff to figure out, I think this is part of I think what gave me also the confidence to say, you know what, hey, I'm done with the corporate life, right? I've done 25 years as in leadership roles in technical and operations, and then as a CEO. And then at some point, right, the fun wasn't there anymore, and I really started looking like, what am I really like doing, right? And it's helping other leaders grow and helping them get better at what they do, and building communities, right? And this is the part that I think is really helping me to do that, right? How do you make the connections between people? And again, part of that is, right, you will get rejected if I mean, you know that for yourself, right? If you're building a community, not everybody says yes, and you know that they should be joining, right? You know it's the right thing for them, but right, they don't see it. It's not the right thing. It's maybe not the right fit for them from a personality standpoint. But at the end of the day, right, you got to go, and you got to accept that a good chunk of the conversations that you have result in no. And I can look at this now and say, you know, I'm glad the person said no. When I really think about it, right, it wasn't the right fit anyway, and I'm glad they did not join, because otherwise you have to fix that later.
The last thing you want to sell someone on is a community. So even if they pay you, they're not showing up. I can promise you that. So there was something interesting that you said of that process of becoming a CEO. So I think you said technical, then operations, then CEO. So I'm the type of CEO that's a visionary, right? I know exactly where I want to go, but I don't really care about the strategy and how we're going to get there. I think when we were talking, you kind of are able to wear that hat of a visionary and operational, which, if you can, it's a very unique blend. But talk to us about how you manage they're kind of a split personality.
Yeah, it pretty much is, I think. And again, there's not very many, I think, that they can really do that. So I love the visionary portion, right? I can see, I mean, even back in the college days, I mean, I've had conversations with my buddies there, like, hey, what are you going to do 10 years after, right? And we're already talking, right? What's your second and third job after you get out of college? And what do you see, where do you see you go long term? And I think that ability to look at the vision is one key aspect, I think, for any entrepreneur. And like you said, right, a lot of entrepreneurs are more of the visionaries. But then how do you make that thing really into into a strategy, into a step-by-step process that does that? And I think, my engineering background and all those type of things, right, come together, and you lay it out, you look at the end goal, where is it going, and then you start drawing the map and filling in the gaps in between. I mean, it's, to me, it comes very natural. But right, for a lot of visionaries, they come up with 25 ideas before breakfast, and 3 of them are maybe good, and then it's like, then they distract the team. And I think if you're the visionary, ideally, right, you bring in somebody who can then take those ideas, filter them, and then keep that sharp line between the vision and the integration, and basically implement this, and then push back on the visionary and say, hey, dude, right, this is too much. Let's park it. Let's look at this in the next quarter, in the next annual, whatever it is, and go from there.
Well, what's key for what you just said is parking it somewhere. So in a visionary's mind, like, until that idea is at least in process or parked somewhere else in a place where the whole team's kind of tracking that in the VTO from EOS, I think a lot of companies, and look, I tell everybody, if your coach or advisor doesn't have a coach or an advisor, like, you should run for the hills, because we all need it. And in our session a couple of weeks ago, we've been changing some directions here in the House of Bricks. You've watched it over the last couple of years, which is okay. It's our test, fail, learn, grow model. Get the minimum viable client, right? And then you read and react, and that does result in a most valuable product. But we were at this point where I started to go through what we were doing with you, and you're like, dude, do you even use your own simple operating system? And I was like, wait a minute, this is not simple at all. We're all over the map. Our strategy isn't clear. And so I left that conversation humbled, but that's how we learn. So we're continuing to test, fail, and learn and grow here at the House of Bricks. And Bernie's been a great advisor for me over the last year, and he's watched us make a lot of progress. Come on, Bernie, tell us we're doing a good job here from our first meeting to our last one, other than how disorganized we were.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And this is part of that journey, right? I mean, sometimes it's not wrong to basically go and test another direction and then go it, right? I think a lot of times it's do you have enough time, and do you give your team enough time to really see where that direction is going, right? And if you're the guy with the ants in the pants, right, that needs to see that change happen, like, quickly, and it might take 3 or 6 months for something to really show results, then, right, you have the patience, or you now start already pushing another direction, and then the team says, oh my God, like, here we go again, right? I think that's the challenge. And I think one thing that I've noticed, right, I've been a Vistage member before I came a Vistage chair, right? And like, you've seen that, right? Every time you go to a Vistage meeting, great speaker, great topic, some of the members bring some ideas to the table and say, oh, I should be using this, I should be implementing this, right? And then all of a sudden you go back, and like, the team sits there and rolls their eyes and say, oh, here we go again. Adam was at a Vistage meeting. What's going to come, right?
Right.
Wednesday's Vistage day. Thursday, he's coming back with a bunch of new ideas that he scribbled down on his notepad while he was at the meeting, right? And I think being able to understand what the rest of the team needs, right? And then say, yeah, you know what? Hey, I've added 5 things to the parking lot, right? And then review that and say, and somebody might say, you know what? Hey, dude, let's not wait on this one. Let's go. And I think that's part of that, right? But giving somebody else that authority to say no to you, the owner, right, that has the name on the building or the name in the lights behind you, I think that's a lot of challenge, right? Because at the end of the day, you sign a paycheck, and who's willing to say no, right? Hey, no, this is not a good idea.
If they wait even till they get back? Or are they texting the team during the meeting? We should look into this. We should look into this. I don't do that, but I've seen other people do it. There was one speaker we had in Minnesota. I think his name was David Friedman or something, the culture guy. So what he did is he had a video that he gave, like, I think he emailed it out to the CEOs and he was like, send this to your team. And I think it like opened up, hey, your CEO was just at my speaking event for Vistage. Here's everything he's going to tell you. These, just he was like preemptive on like even how the visionaries and CEOs act. So I thought that was really cool. And but yeah, it's easy for leaders to come there and get inspired. But before we kind of wrap up here, I do want to highlight a couple of takeaways that stood out to me just as I was prepping and then knowing you just in general over the last year. But if your big promise, what it sounded like is if we stay at the surface, we're going to keep solving the wrong problems. But when we really dig into our fears, the limiting beliefs, and our real motivators, that's where breakthrough is going to happen. And it's not just in our personal life, it's in the business. So I speak as a visionary because I am one. We like the surface level. We know where we want to go, but do we really spend the time? And you don't have to. It can have the right people around you to really vet those ideas. But what I see in terms of why this matters, I talk about all the time on LinkedIn, and you know this from your journey from childhood to even now as a Vistage coach and chair. Leadership can be lonely. It's a lonely place, but it doesn't have to be. And so if you have the right community, you can build courage together, and really anything is possible. So if you're a part of Vistage or the House of Bricks, any community out there, that can solve for a lot of that leadership loneliness. And you have to understand, when you go into a community, we're seeing this now, right, Bernie, in our groups, like it just takes time to build trust. And the difference between our first meeting last year, I think I get a plaque for a year at the next meeting, don't I?
You might get an extra one because you've actually been a Vistage member in Minnesota, so you might get the 2-year plaque. So.
Yeah, please. I mean, I've definitely paid enough, but it's definitely worth the investment. So anyway, it does matter for leaders to be connected. I like the exclusivity, not in an arrogant way, but just being around other CEOs, you can just relate at that level. And so my takeaway is for everyone, talk to a coach, get an advisor, be in a community, mentor others. I know, Bernie, you're probably getting the same feelings and rewards that I do now. I've always tried to mentor people in business, but more purposeful about it. I'm sure that's rewarding for you too. So I want to just thank everybody for tuning in. Bernie, appreciate the honesty, the transparency, the insight, and being a committed member of the House of Bricks community, showing up. You can beat 80% of your competition by just showing up consistently. And for everyone listening out there, keep testing, keep learning. You got to fail. I just failed and it's not here. So keep testing, failing, learning, and growing. We make mistakes here all the time at House of Bricks too. So I want to thank everybody for joining. And if you're not a part of the House of Bricks community, want to learn more, absolutely reach out to me. If you're anywhere, I believe in the world, there's probably a Vistage group. So there's value to that. The in-person, we do some trips as well, going up to Traverse City in a couple weeks to play some golf. So looking forward to that. Just great time with the Vistage group. So Bernie, thanks for joining. Any closing thoughts for our listeners?
Yeah, I think thanks for having me again. I think we all carry baggage, right? And a lot of times, again, it goes us back as early as our childhood, and those are the limiting beliefs that we deal with. And again, if you're in a group that help you come over that one and ask you, hey, why are you so stuck on this type of thing, right? Or what's preventing you from doing that? And that's really, I think, the benefit of, again, having a coach, having a peer group, right? That really don't sugarcoat it, like you said, right? Just, hey, tell it as it is. Tell it like the kids tell you. And I think that's the way to go, right? And be aware of those limiting beliefs that you have, and yeah, work with them, right? You don't overcome them, but you work with them. You make yourself aware of them, and I think that's where the deeper dive comes from, and that's what allows you to really ultimately solve the problems for the long term.
And the best way to be a community member is to be more interested in others than you are in yourself. And if everyone follows that, you won't be the over authentic guy in the first meeting. Like people are like, who's this guy? You know, it's not therapy. So appreciate everyone joining, and we will see you next week.
Sounds good. Thank you.